we'll get rolling, and I'm sure everyone will be in by the time we get to the real meat of things. I am Stephen Stamp, pleased to be bringing you another session. This time with Joe Nardella. We're doing fundamentals of face-off, teaching youth how to face off. Joe, of course, has long been a well-known field lacrosse face-off expert, and has moved over, has played box for a while. It's not like you're new to box, but I think new to a lot of box fans who didn't get a chance to see it before. Had a great rookie season with the New England Black Wolves, fresh off a championship in PLL last summer, so a lot going on, and you're obviously one of the top face-off guys around. And with your face-off academy, you've taught a lot of people how to take face-offs, Joe.
Yeah, a ton. So I actually started Face Off Factory following graduation 5 years ago at Rutgers, and I was a coach at Harvard. When I moved up to Boston and played for the Boston Cannons, I had noticed there was a huge demand for face-off training, so we really started building it out in New England and the surrounding states of Massachusetts, and then brought our programs more nationally. And over the past year or so, I think we've coached close to like 1,000 athletes, which is pretty crazy. And now with the virtual training, we've been doing pretty popular sessions every week. Like we've been getting 50 or so kids in our groups on Monday, and then 20 or so on Thursday. So keeping it rolling despite the virtual limitations, but things have been going really well. And I'm really excited to present and share to all of you guys a lot of the things that I've kind of learned the hard way over the past 5 years.
Excellent. I just want to thank our sponsors as we get rolling. So Manitoba Lacrosse, Sticks and Picks Podcast, Uncommon Fit, Bear Paw Lacrosse Events, the PAR Team, Major Series Lacrosse, and Apex Lacrosse Events. Thank you to all of those sponsors who are helping to make this event possible. And thanks to Joe Nardella, who is about to teach us not everything you need to know about facing off, but a pretty good start along that road.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. I really appreciate it. So for all you guys, when I was thinking of what to present, and I've done several webinars, say with coaches, kids, etc. Obviously, facing off's a little bit more hands-on. So yes, I could show you guys a lot of videos. We could break them down, but I feel the best way is to do it through demonstration and to kind of teach you guys exactly how I would teach someone who's learning to face off for the first time. So for anyone who has face-off experience, some of this stuff we may be revisiting, but for those of you guys who are new to it, I hope that I can, increase your knowledge and make you an effective teacher in this hour. And then my themes and goals of the session is 1, to teach the most effective face-off methods, show how to implement them. 2, teach you guys the rules, limitations, guidelines surrounding the position, what to do, what not to do. And then 3, just allow you guys to lead, having learned and feeling confident on how to teach your face-off athletes what to do. All right. So for starters, and we're going to cater most of the rules around outdoor lacrosse. I'll visit some of the indoor rules as well. For starters, in the field game, your hand cannot be touching the plastic. That's kind of a common one. Your stick, you're actually going to try to get the ball in the middle of the stick, and the top of my stick has to line up to the throat of my opponents. They call that top to stop. Now, when I come down, where the throat of this stick is, there's an imaginary line that runs up and down. That's called the neutral zone, and no part of your body can be in that neutral zone because it's advantageous if you were to start there, right? And officials are trying to limit head-to-head contact, which used to happen very often in face-offs, so they try to keep those heads out of that neutral space. Now, similar to traveling in basketball, once you secure that ball, you have 1 step to pop it out, right? And 1 attempt. So I can't shake that stick, and if it sticks in there, that's when you get flagged or get called for a violation for holding. But with that 1 step, think of your left foot kind of as like that pivot foot. So if I take this 1 step, before my left foot comes off the ground, I need to be popping that ball out. It needs to be 1 continuous motion. Now, refs will give you, say, a second or 2 once you secure this ball to make up your mind and decide where to go. But if you sit down there on it, again, they're going to call you for withholding. Now, other rules and just guidelines facing off. When somebody secures this clamp, you cannot come over the top of their hands, their body, their stick, their gloves, or, put your head into any part of them. They will call you for withholding as well. And that's really just a guideline, 1, to speed up the face-offs and get that ball out of there, but 2, protect face-off guys once they do secure that. So those are things to look out for. One of the biggest things that we see when kids go to counter is they bring that arm and try to hook the other guy's arm off the ball. Your kids will get called for that almost every single time because that's an area of concern in terms of injury. Now, The indoor game is a little bit different because they do allow you to kind of get your hand up on the plastic. However, when we line up, you start, say, 2 or 3 inches behind this ball, and they're less concerned about it being in the middle, but more so concerned about you starting back so that when you clamp, you actually have to travel a little bit further to get in there, and that helps speed up the pace of draws. So when we talk about facing off, and you guys watch a lot of the elite level face-off guys, most guys are going motorcycle grip, right? And what that means is my hand is not naturally on this stick. We're rolled over the top. And what I like to do in terms of my grip, and this is very important, is I try to hold the stick at the base of my fingers, wrap my fingertips around it, and then I don't want to be squeezing before I start, right? Facing off's about having that split-second reaction where you can put as much power going into the ball as possible. So if I'm using energy by squeezing, I'm going to have less potential energy, and I'm going to be slower off that whistle. So what I tell kids is, like, here's an easy test. If I'm gripping the stick really loose, you see how it shakes around? That's probably too loose. It's going to take me half a second to get to my punch point or my strong spot when I'm going in for that clamp. That's a waste of time, and that's going to be counterproductive. Now, if I grip this stick firmly, right, I'm not engaging my muscles yet, but when I shake it, the stick doesn't move around. So that's kind of what we're looking for. And again, you want to get that right pinky as close to the plastic as possible. Now with my left hand, this is where it's going to vary because everyone's different sizes, their arms are different lengths. I think the further up you go, the quicker you might be because your left hand is closer to the ball. However, the further down you go, you get a lot more leverage. So you want to try to find that happy medium between being strong and being quick. So I like to say, put your right hand outside your hip. Now take your left hand, put it outside your other hip. And if you want to move down, say, an inch, that's usually a pretty comfortable spot for most people. And I'm just a little bit further than shoulder width apart. All right. Now, for anyone who has kids who may be secondary face-out guys or looking to counter, or your change of pace guy, and they like going neutral grip's going to be a little bit better for people who aren't expecting to win as many clamps. And all I would say to do for that, it's similar to my moto grip in terms of concepts, but base of the fingers, wrap them around. Now instead, because when we're motorcycle grip, we can really cock that wrist back, right? Now I'm going to cock this wrist, say, one more edge on my shaft towards my body so that right wrist is loaded up and I can still get a little bit of snap with this top edge. And we'll talk about why that's important later. But from neutral grip, you'd probably want to go a little bit further down with your left hand because you're trying to get more leverage. And this underhand grip is utilizing smaller muscles than my motorcycle grip. So you're going to need more power recruited from that left hand. All right. Now, when we talk about stance, most guys are facing off on a knee. I'm going to teach you both the knee down and the stand-up stance. However, when we're thinking about a face-off, I always like to reference a clock. So if 12 o'clock is straight forward, right, the ball sits where in terms of my body when I'm on this side of the line? At about 2, right? So everything needs to be set up, my head, shoulders, chest, hips, feet, going towards 2 o'clock, no matter if I'm on my knee or I'm standing up on 2 feet. So when I come down and I go down on my knee, I like to think there's 3 points of contact: my right knee, my right foot, my left foot, right? Now, what shape has 3 sides? And this is a really easy way to get your kids to think about this, is a triangle, right? And the most balanced triangle is an equilateral. So we want the gap between all 3 points of contact, or my anchors, to remain the same or to be equal. So when I come down, a lot of times I approach the ball from this left side of it because I'm trying to get in my head, hey, we're going to 2 o'clock every single time. And now I put my stick down flat first, and this is going to give you some time because I'm telling the official I'm not ready yet, right? And I try to pick out a spot on my shaft so that I know my stance is consistent. So for me, when I bring my knee down, I don't like it to touch my glove because I feel like I'm too close and I can't extend this elbow. And we'll talk about why that's important as well. But facing off is all about extension so we can get as much power as possible going into the straw. So when I place my right knee down, I like to think about it being in the middle of my hand. So I look right at this STX logo. I'm trying to, line up at either the S or the T when I come down. My left foot's going to remain the same every time. That goes just outside my butt end. So this will be different for guys who are smaller. If you're coaching youth kids, they may be putting it behind the butt end because their legs aren't as long. But the big thing is this right knee points at an angle towards the ball, and my left foot is kind of turned either just straight or a little bit in so I get my hips going towards the ball. And that's really important because that makes it really easy to get my upper body and arms traveling the proper direction for these face-offs. So when I come down again, stick flat, knee comes down to the middle of my shaft, left foot comes out. And as you guys can see, my 3 points of contact are about the same distance apart. Now I see guys who like to be a little more angled and they have these feet close together. What this is gonna do is force you to rotate upfield because you need to get strong with that first motion. With my feet close together, I'm not balanced. If you were to push me, I'd fall right over. And on the converse side, I see some guys who like going square, meaning everything's pointed straight. And yes, that can be good for a strong first move. But again, we're looking for the happy medium with all this stuff. So I think lining up on that 45-degree angle gives us the best of both worlds, where we can commit to a strong first move, but we're not moving straight up field, just going into my rotation. Now, a couple things. When you guys are teaching clamps, I try to make it as simple as possible, right? Because kids kind of remember buzzwords or little things that click. So when we line up, the goal of this face-off is to get the ball in the throat. All these heads nowadays are designed for the stick to be pinched with that ball in the throat. The throat's the stiffest part of the stick. You're going to have the most control. You're going to be able to put the ball where you want it if you're able to get it there. What we have to do to get it there is we need to get this top rail over the ball, and we need to get that throat to kind of stuff in or drive again to like 2 o'clock. We call it traveling down the line. All right. So a great way to get your kids better at this is to have them start with the ball at the top of the stick or up in the shooters, a little further than they're going to have to travel in a game. And now, with the reason being is because when someone else is clamping against you, if you guys just come to the ball, you're not going to drive through a stick. So we practice going a little bit further, and it forces you to really focus on extending those arms, right? Because if I bend this elbow, right, or drop my shoulders, I don't punch to the ball on a straight line. And the fastest way from point A to point B is that straight line. In facing off, any of you guys who have any lacrosse experience know a face-off can be over in half a second, right? So if I do anything to waste time or motion, I'm going to be inefficient and I'm setting myself up for failure. So we call elbow flare. One of the things we look out for, if you see your face-off guy clamping and bending that elbow towards the ball, you know he's not clamping properly, right? So when I clamp, yes, we want to go down the line, and that's what this first concept is, but I don't just stuff both hands to the right. Now, why do you think that is? Because really, when we're attacking this ball, there's a couple different angles we need to approach it at. We need to come over, we need to get in, but we also want to think about getting around it, right? Now, shorter motion is faster than a longer motion. So we want to really think about this left hand being in control. And I only punch to about the top of this mat, no further, because if I do, I'm starting to take my body in strength away from the ball, not towards it, if that makes sense. So ideally, a perfect clamp, you end up with those arms extended, your shoulders slightly behind your hands, because if I get over it, I'm imbalanced and top heavy, but slightly behind those hands, and about at a 45-degree angle. Any further leaves you overextended, and any shorter leaves you kind of stuck with your left hand in your pocket, and that means we're not really using it, right? This isn't a natural punching motion. I always tell kids, if you're going to punch a punching bag, right, you'd want to extend both those arms with your fists. So why would I just drive to the side or just drive forward? I'm trying to punch that punching bag, which is the ball, all right? So for down the line, I love doing progressions where you go top of the stick, and I'm turning down, driving in, pushing off these toes, 3/4, same thing, and then just normal top to stop with the ball in the middle. And over time, your kids will see how much more comfortable they feel punching into the ball and getting the ball to the throat if they practice at a further distance, all right? And just quick couple concepts. When I'm down in this stance, it's really easy to get caught looking forward. Think about, again, my shoulders and my head looking at the ball in a 45, and I want this head to be right above my glove so I get as much weight over this ball as I possibly can. All right, so that's kind of our first concept, getting down the line, getting the ball to the throat. Second concept, top edge down. How do we work on getting over this ball? Well, there's a couple of things. First off, my grip and rolling that wrist back will help, right? But really, that top edge slamming down comes from my legs and putting power from there over the ball. So when I clamp, I want to think about driving off those toes and getting this top edge in my knuckle all the way to the ground, right? So I'm actually turning down and punching towards the ground. So we do a simple little drill called the elevator drill. And for that, I'm going to start by being just off the ground, like you could slide a piece of paper underneath the head of my stick. And I'm going to try to aim my clamp right at the back of this ball. Set, bang. And now you see how when I push off those toes, and if you were to film your students, ask them, do you feel like you're diagonal? Now for me, when I look up at the screen, I see everything, my knees, my chest, my shoulders is pointed right at that 2 o'clock spot. So that's an ideal clamp. Now a really good test for this, because a lot of kids, when they think about getting their top edge over, they tend to push a little bit forward, right? And now pushing is a problem because whose stick is on the other side of the line? My opponent's. So if I start to push, I'm actually making their job a lot easier. So what I have kids do is they're going to set this ball up, and I have to put this glove down just so my ball doesn't move on my mat. We're going to set this ball up a few inches in front of my first ball. And what I want to do is get this top edge down without hitting that second ball, right? So this is pretty easy because I'm a few inches apart. Now, if I tighten this gap up and make it a little bit harder, right, it becomes much more difficult. And again, we're making sure that pinky slams into the ball and my thumb almost turns right to the midfield line. And by turning my thumb, I eliminate the possibility of flaring my elbow out, right? Because I can't turn this knuckle and bend my elbow at the same time when I clamp, right? They're kind of different motions. So I always tell kids, stab with your pinky, turn with your thumb, and that'll lead us to 45 degrees. So that's top edge down. It's important because it helps you get over the ball and helps push your opponent back. And by driving and aiming at the back of the ball, you can do it really, really effectively. Now, the hardest thing to teach in face-offs, but the most, I want to say effective skill, if guys have it, is speed. Now, speed can come from a lot of different reasons. Number one, kids' fast twitch muscles, right? Older kids are probably a little bit more neurologically developed than younger kids, so they're probably going to be a little quicker with their fast twitch, right? Some of it's genetic, I've found. Like, I've seen a couple kid families where the kids are all very quick, like really good hands, and a couple other families where it's the opposite, and that's just kind of how it works. But it's something that can be improved upon. Why? Because we're actually reacting to a whistle. It's not just straight line. I'm punching a punching bag and we're timing it, right? So when I think about speed, there's a couple factors that come into play. Number one, especially for kids, is focus, right? How do we get them to have a mechanism where they can focus and be locked in for, say, that 10 to 15 second window where between the ref saying down and him actually blowing the whistle, the way they're setting them up, moving them, adjusting them? How do we get a kid to focus? And I think when you look at all forms of exercise, yoga, meditation, it all comes back to breathing, right? So what I tell kids to do, and we've had a lot of success with this, especially recently, is on the down call, it's a big breath out, right? And now from that point forward, I do not want to focus on my breathing. I need to focus on the whistle. However, I've had kids that hold their breath when they hear the ref say set, or exhale when they hear the ref say set. For me, that doesn't work. I find that I'm thinking about other stuff before the face-off, and I should just be focusing on the ball. But again, all of those things are worth experimenting with for different kids because everyone's a little different mentally. And I think just the aspect of incorporating breathing into your routine is going to help you be more focused. Second, what are we actually focusing on? Most people say, oh, well, coach, I'm looking at the ball. Well, yeah, you could look at the ball, but there's also going to be other distractions. Maybe the guy moves his stick. So what I like to do, I call it laser focus. You're going to pick out a line, a letter, a turf bead, a smudge on the ball, and you're going to stare directly at it. And that's also yielded a lot of success to guys being able to focus a little bit better. Third, the officials, right? Officials determine when the whistle is blown. So, unlike all people, we're creatures of habit, right? Refs are going to revert back to the norm or what they subconsciously do. Now, I blow hundreds of whistles a week, and the kids tell me most of the time they think I'm pretty quick with my whistles. So what does that tell you? You got to be thinking about it the whole time, right? Speed comes from analyzing what the officials are doing and being able to anticipate a little bit, right? So what I tell guys, hey, ask your backup goalie or one of your teammates, just count the ref steps. And I do this all the time when I watch film, and we're lucky because we only have a limited pool of officials. So it becomes a little bit easier to start getting familiar with guys. But when the ref puts his hand down like this, that's when he's saying set. So if I take 4 or 5 steps back before that whistle comes to my mouth and I blow it, you know it's going to be a little bit slower of an official. So as soon as he says set, you're probably telling yourself, all right, wait a second, and then that whistle is going to blow. Now, on the converse side of it, you got other refs who will be set, one whistle, and they're one step, and they're blowing that whistle. So for those guys, that's when you have to have programmed in your head, hey, as soon as he says set, I'm ready for the whistle to blow, right? Then that's why that breath on that down helps, because as soon as he says set, I know I'm getting ready to go. And I think anticipation is something that's overlooked and not talked about, but can really, really help you figure out officials.
Hey, Joe.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a question. I was curious about that because I was wondering if many officials change their cadence, change their rhythm or routine where, you say some guys will back up 4 steps, some guys will back up 1 and be ready to blow. Are the refs who will do, 1 step and then they'll do 3 or 4, or they're, different timing?
Yeah, so they're actually told they're supposed to vary it, right? But I think over the course of the game, like if I'm watching film and I'm analyzing you as an official, I will see that you're going to have a tendency, right? So maybe for you, over the course of the game, if I chart it, we used to do this with my college guys. We'd have refs that we were familiar with. I would see, hey, out of 20 faceoffs, Steven blew 10 of them within 3 steps, right? So he's probably on the faster side. And this is not something we want to think about too much because I feel like kids can get in their own heads about it, but it's definitely worth visiting and just being like on top of, because I think if you can at least categorize it as fast or slow, if you have to be really ready or if you got to wait a little bit.
Cool.
All right. Next, pinching the ball, locking it in, exits. What we want to think about is the reason we clamp this ball to the throat is because we're trying to get control. Now, to be able to direct the ball, we lift that left hand, or you could even throw it through your leg. But to direct that ball, the greatest chance we have of it going where we want is when the ball is in the throat, right? So what I really like to do is give your kids options on popping the ball out. So you need to practice putting it. I like to just use a quadrant system. If, say, the edge of my mat is the midfield line, just think about it, front right, back right, or front right, back right, front left, back left. And we're trying to be able to pop the ball fluently to all those spots so that you can respond to what this other guy does. Now, these are all drills that kids can be working on their own right now. And I'm going to give you guys the list of all these with accompanying videos. So it'll be pretty easy for you guys to incorporate this stuff. But when we pinch the ball, I like to think about segmenting the motions, right? And this will allow your kids to be more thorough with both their practice and execution on game day. So when we clamp, everything remains the same, right? Try to get to 45 degrees, get the ball in the throat. Now, when I pinch, I think about my right wrist kind of pulling towards my knee, right? And my left hand kind of comes out, up, and back, almost like I'm rowing, right? And now when I get it here, I can think about chicken winging this, right? You see my elbow to my armpit. And what that's going to allow me to do is when I want to get to my feet and get this ball out, I'm going to squeeze as hard as I can. I'm going to dip my nose a little bit, and I'm going to hop my feet wide. Now, why did I hop kind of sideways? Well, if I get sideways in relation to this midfield line, now I can go forward or now I can go backwards. Whereas if I were to hop straight, I really only have one option, right? So that alone is a huge piece of this. So we call this pinch progression. Very simple. 4 go calls or 4 whistles. Set, go, clamp, go, pinch, go, hop, go, pop. And when I pop the ball in front of me to the left, I always want to try to get it outside my knee. Because remember, my opponent's on my right. So a lot of times we'll drag away just to get some separation. Say his stick is here. I just finished my clamp. Drag away to get this separation. Now I'm going to flick, turn my body, and try to catch the ball with my back facing my opponent. All right? And this is a great drill to just rep out over and over and over. And kids should be, when they do this, coaching themselves and talking to themselves through these steps. And that's a big part of facing off and understanding technique, is being able to coach yourself through it, right? Because in a game, unfortunately, you're not going to have a personal face-off coach on the field, you being like clamp, pinch, hop, pop, right? But if you can start to tell yourself how to do these things, you'll be able to troubleshoot when things go wrong. Now, taking this one step further, as I referenced, we want to be able to pop the ball to any point on the field. And we're going to touch on each of these quickly, but the obvious one is a pinch and pop, or popping that ball to my front left quadrant. That's where most guys want to go. A lot of people are comfortable doing that, and that's probably the most practiced exit. Second, and we call these stationary exits because I'm not moving my feet. I'm just imagining I won the clamp cleanly, right? Second would be back left, right? So what we can do now, we call it a pivot or a drop step. So clamp, pinch, pop. And now what I'm going to do is I can either drop and reach my foot back, or I can just pivot my feet. I kind of turn my stick, and now I'm able to pop this ball behind me to the left with my back, again, to my opponent. All right? And that's a really safe one for getting out cleanly, getting possession, not forcing it going forward. So that's a great one to practice, especially for guys who aren't serious transition threats where you want them going forward all the time. Next, the reason we hop sideways is called a right pop, because I'm putting the ball to the right of my body, or a backdoor exit. And backdoor, you're thinking of going back towards your own goal. Now, when I do this, a lot of times it's because I've gone forward before, and my opponent, now when he sees me win that clamp, is going to step upfield to try to defend me. So this is one that you could both do simple clamp, pinch, hop. And now I'm going to almost like roll these wrists back, and I want to think about turning my left shoulder to my right shoulder. So again, I show my opponent my back as I pop the ball away from pressure. Now, if you guys watch any really good college, like kids, professionals, they're good at playing defense, but there's guys who are even better at exiting. Perfect example of this, there's like a million videos of them too, if any of you guys wanted to watch, is TD Erland. You watch him with his exits, he always is great at reading pressure. And one thing, just working with him and training with him, actually, I've noticed is he talks about hesitating, right? Taking a half a second to read what your opponent does. Now, when he does this, a lot of times when he hesitates, he throws a head fake if he wants to go out the back. So he would drop his shoulders to the left or drag his stick to the left. And now as soon as he sees them step, that's when he can get out backdoor very cleanly with his hands free. So those are things you could have more advanced guys work on, or as you progress and want to add nuance to the training, work on a head fake, work on a drag fake, right?
And Joe,
last one would be, yes.
One more. I was going to say, if you want to go through that, we did have a question from Christopher Stevenson about timing. So I forgot there was one more, but he was saying if you can't study an opponent, say it's a tournament or you just don't have access to film, what do you recommend for a strategy to figure out how to win the face-offs in that game? Like start quick for the first few and adjust, or how do you approach it?
I think you start with a clear head, right? You could have your coach or teammate, like I said, count the official steps and just see. But every time, like in most tournaments, there's going to be at least two refs, right? Mm-hmm. Just start to think about who's quicker of the two, right? Or who's slower of the two. And now you can be a little bit more analytical about what to prepare for. Now, like I said, you want to be careful with this, especially with younger kids, because you don't want to overload them or get them thinking too much. But I think the best time to do it would be just ask them after each quarter, or ask them if you have a kid who's pretty self-sufficient, ask yourself after each quarter. Usually there's a couple-minute window. That's a good time to like take a step back and think about how the last frame of face-offs just went. So I think quarters, halftime are when you would, like, if you're at a tournament, tell kids to just think about how the whistles are and what adjustments may need to be made.
I think he was looking, it sounds from the question like more thinking about the opponent as opposed to the refs.
Oh, how do you
scout your opponents? Talking a bit about adjusting to opponents. Yeah.
Now, I think if you were going to watch your opponents, and this is kind of what I'm progressing towards, is different movements off the initial whistle, is watch their left hand, right? So someone who keeps this left hand short and doesn't punch very far, right? You could tell they're probably going to be a first move guy, right? They're just trying to drive in, get a lot of that ball right away. So anytime you see someone stay short with their left hand, they're probably going to do a good job getting over this ball, but they're susceptible to the ball being pushed out, and they're susceptible to you clamping and beating them in a tie-up, right? Next, if I see someone who clamps and rotates pretty quickly, right? I know there's an opportunity to go forward or to rake him, right? Or to do something different because he's throwing his weight upfield, and you can tell by that left hand. Lastly, if I see someone lift their left hand, right, I know they're trying to pinch the ball right away. So if I can lock them up with a strong first move and just stay patient and low in my rotations, you'll see a lot of success there. So I think easiest way to scout an opponent on the fly, watch their left hand, and it'll tell you what he's going to do. And I'll show you these moves after we finish with our exit.
Perfect.
Thanks. So our last exit is that front right quadrant. And this would be if I'm pretty good or I show a couple times that I go backwards to the left. Anyone who's smart and competitive is going to do what? They're going to chase you around this way. So this is where we can bait guys, really utilize that head fake and still get out the front if teams are trying to get you to go back or trying to put pressure on you going back. So when I clamp, pinch, pop, and pivot, now as I see him take steps past my right glove, I know that if I pop this ball outside my right shoulder, I can get away cleanly out the front. And I think a head fake on these ones can go a long way. So when I pivot, it's just a quick fake. I see him dip or move past me, and then I pop that ball out forward into the right. Now, many of you guys have seen face-offs or watched film of a game or may have noticed not everybody does the same thing when they clamp, right? It's not always going to be our perfect 45-degree clamp, especially when the sticks make contact as we're going down and trying to get that ball. So there's a couple different moves that you could do that are clamp alternatives, we'll say. Number one is called clamp and rotate or power clamp. What we're going to try to do is clamp and move upfield as we clamp and extend. And it's really important that this is practice. So you're not doing what I said earlier, hinging your body away from the ball and just driving upfield. So what we want to think about is pushing off those toes, elongating my body, right? So I kind of start with my head over the shaft. So when I clamp and drop back, I can get low, and I'm going to throw everything out towards 12 o'clock as long as I drive in. All right, so it's going to look like this. And this is just a great one to rep out as like a warm-up when you're practicing your first move, set, whistle, and I stop at 12 o'clock and I want to be in a nice athletic stance, elbows kind of inside my knees, butt up, feet wide, head low. All right, and that's called a clamp and rotate or a power clamp. Next is a plunger. And this is what you see a lot of guys do is they actually throw their left hand up off the whistle. Now, what's the advantage of that, right? I said it's going to hurt you in those tie-up situations. However, for some guys, it may be quicker and it helps you get your bottom edge under the ball as well as your top edge over it. So you kind of grab the ball and you can get out faster. So guys who are speed guys, right? Or if you're trying to change it up because someone's beating you with a good first move, you can lift this left hand. So the only difference that I would suggest is you notice most of the time when I'm down, my right elbow is bent a little bit, similar to my hip. It's not bent very much, right? But on, say, this plunger move, we want to just be able to press straight down. So I'm going to straighten my arm up a little bit. I'm going to roll my wrist back a little more than usual. And now I'm thinking about that same diagonal extension, but I'm lifting that left hand up, right? And you guys will watch my bottom edge. See how it shoots right underneath the ball? So I could grab this right away. So for someone who may be smoking you in tie-ups or rotating, like I said, if you notice his left hand travels far, well, maybe you plunge and with half this ball, you kind of roll those wrists back and try to toss that out forward quickly. So that's called a plunger. All right, so those are kind of like our three clamp versions, right? And the last one would be like almost like that elevator face up or short and sharp, I like to call it. And what we're doing here is we're going to try to limit our left hand to only coming forward to 10 o'clock. And we're really just focused on both knuckles snapping to the ground. So if you see someone who's really good maybe at that plunger, this is a way to get over the top of the ball and to steal it from them, is you're just going to try to punch the ground right at the back of the ball with both hands. And you see my left wrist turns over too. So this is a really focused movement on slamming my top edge over the ball. All right. Next, counter moves. What could we teach guys who maybe not like be the best at facing off, right? Or if you're in an emergency and someone's whooping your butt, what's your option B? Now, I think anytime you're getting beat or someone may be more skilled than you, you got to think about it a little bit more strategically. If I am going against Steven and we're facing off and he's awesome at clamping and he's beating me, well, what if he has to worry about another move or another 2 moves? Now he's thinking about what I'm going to do before the face-off, which gives me that advantage because he's not worrying about what he's doing, and that's where details get left behind. So our first and most common counter, I think anyone would tell you, would be like a quick rake, or people call it a laser rake. Well, I have a little bit of an alternative version that I think is going to be more effective. Number one, we grip this stick how we talked about when we're neutral grip. We're standing up, and this is where I'll intro the stand-up stance. But with my left hand, rather than trying to lift like I previously mentioned, we're actually going to curl this over the top, and we're going to move it about halfway up. Remember, I'm not clamping against him. I'm trying to get the ball out as quick as possible. That's why they call it the laser rake, I think. But if I turn this over, it's going to give me more pull down this line. Or if my left hand is in the middle, it's closer to the ball, so I'm going to be a little faster. So we're almost going to think about our hands being straight up, and then you're kind of rolling back and underneath, and this top corner is going to aim right at the ball, and my left hand is going to pull straight to my left. So hopefully I can get a little backspin or get this ball to trickle out of his stick. Now, when teaching stand-up stance, comfort is the most important, because remember, unlike our knee down where all the weight's on our 3 points of contact, some of the weight due to gravity is going to be on our hands because we're standing up. So what I need to think about is, hey, I'm down in my knee stance. I'm just going to put my right foot a tiny bit to the right of where this knee is. Now what it should do is rest, like your elbow should rest right on that knee. And you see how my foot is pointed again at like 45 degrees towards this ball. And I'm going to do my best to turn this left hip as well and get a little wider than shoulder width apart. All right. Now from here, if we were doing that laser rake, like I said, you want to think about rolling back, curling that left wrist over, and you're trying to slice a piece of that ball to pull it out. Now, if you miss this, the most important thing is stepping to the right, getting your opponent's helmet kind of in the center of your body, or straddling his stick, right? So if he clamps it here, I'm straddling his stick. Now I can play defense on him going anywhere. When you think about playing defense on someone who secures a clamp, make his job as hard as possible. Get as close to him as you can without, coming over the top or pushing or preventing him from going out, like I mentioned. Don't hook his arm. But what you want to think about is his right glove is going to tell you, it like has all the pressure, and his butt end is going to tell you when he's getting out. So as soon as I see someone lift this butt end, that's when I'm attacking underneath his right glove. People call it a shovel. So if he were to have this ball pinched up like this, what I'm going to do is when they see that right glove come off the ground, or that butt end come off the ground, I'm going to shuffle with him and try to get my hand underneath his and pull him off the ball. So if he's here, right, I'm trying to get underneath and remove that pressure from the ball. Now, if you can't get there and a guy does a good job dragging away, you want to time your check as soon as you see the face of his stick open up, or this bottom edge turn under like he's going to pop it. That's the perfect time to check, and that'll help create 50-50 ground balls. The next kind of counter move before the whistle is called the scissor rake. Same concept. I'm going to move my left hand up a little more, and again, I'm kind of cranking it forward. And what I'm trying to do here is grab my opponent's mesh rather than hit the ball. So my bottom edge is slicing over the ball this time, not at it. And I'm pulling this left hand to my right heel, hence the name scissor rake. So I come under and I try to grab his stick. And a lot of times if you do get this stick, you're going to lift up and the ball will squirt right out. All right. Now, from this stand-up stance, we could also be a little more offensive with it, right? If you have someone who practices this, this could be really, really effective. Guys at the pro level are even starting to do it now. And in college, you're seeing it a lot more. The neutral grip stand-up stance is kind of coming back because of the advantage on ground ball situational plays. So what we would want to do is, again, you're curling this right wrist, you're turning down, you're stabbing your thumb down the line, and my left hand plunges out to that 45-degree mark. So what I'm thinking of when I'm doing this is I come down, I kind of rest those elbows on my knees, right? and it's top edge down, stab, and lift. And now on this one, even if I say get 50% of this ball, I'm going to pick it up, that left hand up a little more. I'm going to roll those wrists back and try to pull the ball through. And this is highly effective going against anyone who rotates upfield, right? Or who keeps that first move short, because you're going to be able to pull the ball out down the line against them. Now, if you guys go against somebody who's excellent at standing up or raking the ball, the way to beat them is to plunge off the whistle without throwing your left hand too far, right? We call it closing the gate or staying tight. And what you would do is in this knee down stance, you can just lift straight off the whistle, right? And as he rakes this out, your top edge will actually trap that ball. Whereas if I were to stay lower, the ball still has a chance of being raked out or quick clamped and scraped out. Okay. And I think this is a great one to practice as like your secondary move if you get in an emergency situation, but it's also great to do against when you go against someone who's countering, or a long stick, because you're already on your feet and you're gonna be able to get out quicker. So you could practice all of these exit spots or different stationary exits out of this stand-up stance. Now, the next thing we're gonna talk about is rotating, but you wouldn't really want to rotate unless you have more than, say, 50 or 60% of this ball from a stand-up stance, because anyone who's knee-down moto grip is going to have the power advantage over you just based on grip. So rather, you would kind of sit here and hold. You want to bring this left hand down. Now, when you see him make his move upfield, that's when you have your chance to pull that ball out to the left side of your body. All right. Any questions?
We do have some questions, actually. We've got a couple. Cool. One is, and you've touched on this a little bit, I think, but if your faceoff guy is getting consistently beaten, what's a good strategy to slow down possession and stop potential fast breaks?
To slow down possession and stop potential fast breaks. Now, these moves I just showed you will help. Teaching them to step in front will help. But I think the biggest thing is your wing play, right? If you can get your guy to rake it, right, or clamp and tie up with him and buy your wings a couple seconds, the face-off becomes much different. Now, I'm going to share my screen and show you guys like what I would kind of do and what I do as a coach. If I got this whiteboard up, draw, and this is my midfield line. Now for my wings, you would almost, like, you want to try to get the other face-off guy, I always think, to think, right? Now, if one team's in red.
It's like you've done this before.
Yeah, a couple times. So if this team's in red, and say my team's in blue, you want to, number one, invite them to go backwards if you're really worried about it. But the thing is, with these guys, they're gonna, if their guys winning it, they're gonna kind of follow your face-off guys or your wing guys around. So if I know that this guy here would love to go forward, or when you watch throughout the game, you see out of these four quadrants, say like, all right, maybe he's popping the ball here the most or here the most. You need to set your wings up accordingly. And what we used to call this when I coached at Harvard was called bounce. And we would tell our wing guys, all right, you're gonna set up hip to hip with these guys, okay? So when the face-off guy comes down, he's gonna check the wings and be like, all right, I should have space as long as my guys do their job. Now, as soon as the ref kind of says down and those guys go down, no face-off guys checking the wings anymore. So you could tell these guys, like if I know that the team in red loves putting the ball into this space, I'm gonna be like, all right, you're gonna start here next to him, or even if, say, this guy was up further, you could have him start next to him, and now you're going to do what we call bounce. You're going to come to the midfield line or come down a little further. So this guy is completely in the dark as to where the wings are, right? Same thing on this side. If you know that he likes going over here, right, to the back left, maybe you say, all right, as soon as the ref places the ball, you're going behind him and you're trying to get a running start to get in there. So there's a lot of creative things you could do with the wings in that sense. But I think the biggest thing that you want to teach your guys in terms of wing play would be if the blue team is trying to get to the red team, right? And just any time in wing play, you want to tell them they need to win this first jump. So if guys are hip to hip, you need to try to beat him off the line. So if the ball squirts out quickly, you have the first crack at it, right? Now, if you guys know that the kid loves to go forward, teams are really worried about it, no matter where I put my wings, and this is what I used to say, like, we would have one guy back, one guy up. I'd call this standard. The guy who's back has defensive responsibility. So his first move every time has to be downfield. Now, it only has to be one step, right? Because I could quickly make up for that and still get in and be a part of the play. This guy does you no good if he just hangs out back here like a safety in football. So first step to the goal, if it's not a clean win, I'm working in and no one gets behind me. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Now, kind of the last piece to this is most fields, or most, like, say you play on a football field or multi-purpose field, they have what? This circle around, right? Now, I think if you could get guys to lock up, and just on the subject of wing play, when we get into this circle, you want to have that front position on him in case the ball does squirt out. But as soon as we get to the circle, you almost want to work to his backside. So now, instead of being right next to him, I'm going to come behind him and I'm going to have my top hand on my stick right in his pocket, right? Now, what this will allow me to do is if the ball does squirt out, I can kind of push him into the faceoff. And now I should have that advantage on any draw that comes out of that circle, right? Because my guys have outside position. So I know if he wins the clamp and I'm able to just get him to counter or guess a little bit, and I can force him, like, by staying close to his body, to pop the ball into space no matter where it is. If my wing guys do a good job of, say, pinning these two guys in or boxing them in by staying on their back, as soon as that ball squirts out, these guys just kind of wall them off, and we should have at least a 2-on-1 ground ball or a first crack at that ground ball. So I think that's a really easy way to offset any face-off disadvantages. If you can get your guy to practice being good at counters, you're going to buy yourself a couple extra seconds, right? And now if you can get them to pop the ball into space and your wings are on the outside, it's playing to your advantage. And if you, like, a couple of years ago, I know a lot of people probably watched college lacrosse. Notre Dame, like, didn't have the best face-off unit, but I saw they were constantly giving guys trouble who were better at facing off. And I was like, why is this? And I noticed they were teaching this concept of everyone stays on the outside in those scrums.
Cool.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have another question from the audience. Someone wants to know who your nemesis on the face-off dot is.
My nemesis on the face-off dot, I'd like to think that my nemesis is whoever I'm playing next, because you kind of got to have that attitude. But I think, honestly, I probably had the best and most battles with Greg Grenlian, because, like, when I came out to play professional, he played for New York, I played for Boston. That was a natural rivalry. The first game we ever played against each other was an overtime playoff game, right? And then, like, the next season, I think we played 2 more times. Both games were 1-goal games. We've probably played against each other, if you count the PLL championship, 4 or 5 times in overtime. So we've absolutely gone at it. A lot of respect for him as a competitor. But I think now it's probably Trevor Baptiste, because he's actually a buddy of mine too, but we play both in the East in NLL. So you have to go against guys in your division 3 times. And then I played him 2 more times in the PLL. So that's 5 times in a calendar year. That's probably the most I've gone against somebody in games. So I would say those guys, and obviously they're really good. So I'm always trying to chase the guys who are up at the top.
Cool. Folks, if we have any other questions, go ahead and get them in now. Otherwise, Joe, do you have any other points you want to wrap up with?
No, I think the last piece would just be tie up body position, and we can kind of discuss this quickly. But if you have a good first move and push off those toes like we talked about, it's going to set you up for being in this position. Now, when we rotate, think about kind of driving this ball or keeping it into the throat the entire time. We just call this the screw drill. And you could practice all of those exits out of this screw drill, right? But what we're doing is we punch this left hand, not too far, because we want to keep a good relationship between my left hand and my left foot. And then I shuffle and swing my hips. Punch, shuffle, swing my hips. So I work nice and tight to that ball. Now, different ways you can practice this. One, you take big moves. And that would mean, all right, I'm getting out rotated. The guy's a little bit ahead of me. I got to catch up so he doesn't get that angle advantage. We rotate. because if I can get to my opponent's shoulder, now I'm squared up pressing at the ball when he's kind of sideswiping at it. I have that power advantage. I'll be able to push his stick back. Next would be a face-off where you have more of it, but you have to be patient. We call that short and choppy. So I just move my left hand several times while I keep my feet moving slowly. The third one would be a saw and screw. So as I'm working around, I see I get a bit more of it. I want to use that left hand to wiggle underneath their plastic. So I clamp, I rotate, and I wiggle this left hand about knee height. And then I come straight down so I can, if I don't have all of it, I don't miss the ball. I cut that edge and work back around. So clamp, rotate, saw, rotate, saw. And that's a really popular one. It leads right into our exits. And then I think lastly would be incorporating our defensive exits or counterclockwise footwork. So if and when I do secure this ball in this tie-up, he stands up to play defense or I'm going against a long pull, I can swing my hips the opposite way, create a wall for my stick with my right foot, pinch this with my hands protected and get out safely. And real quick, the big things you're looking for is up on my toes, elbows inside my knees, not super extended, not top heavy, and my head low.
Cool. We've got one more question that popped up. Wondering about Greg Gorenlian's suggestion to use the circle instead of wings. Do you like that idea? Is that a good idea? Would it play well?
I think it's a really good idea. People are going to keep ragging on the face-off. You know, one thing I think Greg's done a great job is being an advocate for like the youth of our position, right? All these kids love this position. It's super neat because we're the only sport you're never guaranteed to have the ball. But obviously some college coaches get a little upset about it when their teams don't win because they can't recruit a good face-off guy or train and develop a good face-off guy. I think bringing that circle concept, as long as there's not too many people, would be really beneficial because, you know, similar to the box game, guys can come right in. So there's like, yeah, with the exception of Jake Withers, Trevor Baptiste, there's no like real dominant draw guys in indoor because you're getting forced into so many tight situations, right? So it's not like you can just keep bleeding teams out by getting the ball and making them play long possessions. I think the shot clock has helped that anyway. But I do think it's a great concept that would require teams and face-off guys to have to use their wings more and have to make it a true 3v3, which I think would be pretty fun and pretty cool.
Yeah, get more people and make it a. I get that that concern that people have of, you know, you can dominate if your face-off guy is just going to win every draw. So the more people you get involved, the more you make it a scramble or a team effort.
Yes, and I think that's the biggest thing is people don't want to see the game dependent on one or two guys going head to head, right? If it's 3-on-3, it's at least a little bit more team encompassing.
It can be so much fun though, having two good face-off guys going at it with. Like,
it's the best, right? Like those are some of the best matchups.
Yeah. All right, we are going to wrap up. Thanks so much. I want to thank our sponsors again quickly, and all of our sponsors. And we will remind you, Joe's got a further and a more in-depth look at face-offs coming next Wednesday evening in the same 6 o'clock slot. And we'd like to thank Manitoba Lacrosse, the PAR team, Apex Lacrosse Events, Bear Paw Lacrosse Events, Sticks and Picks Podcast, Uncommon Fit, and Major Series Lacrosse. And all of you for being here with us. And Joe, of course, fascinating stuff. Thanks so much for sharing.
Yeah, and real quick, I wanted to share in the chat.
Yes.
I just got to grab the link. I wanted to share the link to all these drills. If anyone's interested or has kids interested in doing virtual training, like I said, we have classes going on a couple times a week. But I think kids can really benefit just by starting with a lot of these drills and concepts that they can work on their own. And once they have a really good understanding of what we're doing, I think that's when it's really appropriate to kind of put them in a group setting. But I'm going to post this link here in the chat. My email's on there, so feel free to reach out at any point regarding any questions. And I look forward to seeing a lot of you guys next week, hopefully.
Perfect. And we'll that'll be sent out by the Lacrosse Summit. It'll be an email will be sent to all the participants in the all the attendees of the seminar. So it'll be sent to them in an email so everyone's got it.
Yeah, and then lastly, for anyone who saw like my presentation dashboard, I have a freebie on there that's it's actually a video that we charge for. It's my full face-off basics video where it covers a lot of these concepts, but in a little bit more detail. It's about 40 minutes, and the link's right there on my dashboard. You just got to provide your email.
Perfect. Thanks so much, and
All right.
have a great
Yeah,
evening.
thanks,
We'll
Stephen. I
see
really
you next week.
appreciate it.
You betcha.
All right, awesome. Sounds great, man.
All
See
right.
ya.
Night.